So finally, we've gotten to the chain rule. And the chain rule is probably the hardest of the rules you're going to learn for derivatives, but it's also the most useful. So basically what the chain rule does is instead of dealing with multiplication or division, it deals with when there's a function inside another function or a composite function. And what's great about the chain rule is it just applies to so many different problems, and once you understand it, it's not that difficult. But seeing it sometimes can be very tricky, especially the first time you work with it. So basically we deal with the same like derivative and f function and g function, but this time the f function is on the outside and what's passed to it is the g function. So an example of this would be cosine of x squared. So in this case, your f function, f of x, would be cosine of x. And let me use a different color here. The g function would be x squared. And so when you take this combo of the two, so kind of f of g of x, go back to blue here, and this equals cosine of, and then what goes inside? Well, it goes not x, but x squared. And so I guess hopefully you can see that this would be very powerful. So let's go ahead and try to solve this problem right here. And if someone asked us, you know, sorry. Okay, there we go. So if someone asked us, what is the derivative of cosine of x squared? Based on our previous rules, you know the derivative of cosine is negative sine, and you know the derivative of x squared is 2x, but how do these two relate? And the answer is chain rule. So what we do here is in chain rule, you actually take the derivative of the outer function and you leave the inner function inside, and then you multiply by the derivative of the inner function, okay? So this example back here of cosine of x squared, we already showed that f of x is cosine of x, okay? So we take this over and we get f of x equals minus sine of x, right? And so we just know that by our trig rules that we went over earlier. And then our derivative of g of x, so it's always good to do this, is 2x, right? Just by the power rule. And then we look at this formula and we know g prime of x gets used and f prime of g of x gets used. So now if we write this down, we basically need f prime of g of x. Sorry, g of x should be red. Times g prime of x, okay? So we just calculated f prime of x here. So f prime of x is negative sine. So we'll do negative sine, but instead of x, we need to have g of x in here. So we know g of x is x squared, so we'll go ahead and write in x squared. And then we multiply by g prime of x, and that's 2x. And that's the solution right here. So we can rewrite that as minus 2x sine of x squared. Okay? So let's go ahead and let me just erase that. Let's look at a different one, okay? Again, these are very challenging. So let's look at a different one where it might be x squared plus 1 squared. We want the derivative of that. So again, we have a function inside another function. And the question is, what's the inner function, what's the outer function? So I'll use the colors again. So the outer function here, it's going to be x squared. Okay, and that's because we have a squared on the outside, and then I can clearly see there's another function on the inside. The function on the inside is going to be what? X squared plus 1. Okay? And let's just go ahead and take these derivatives like we always do, just so we have them. So if we have to use them in the formula later, we can do that. Derivative of x squared is just 2x, just like we have. And just to remind you, this plus 1 disappears, right, due to the derivative of a constant. Okay. So now again, let's write out the formula that's given for us here, and that is f prime g of x inside, and then let me change colors to be consistent. And we get g of x inside the f prime function times g prime of x. Okay. And so when we write this, we will get the derivative, which is 2, sorry, this is derivative, right? So which is 2 times x, but in this case we don't want to put x in here, right? We want to put g of x in here. So we grab g of x, and we put in an x squared plus 1, and then of course we multiply by g prime, which is 2x times 2x. And now at this point you simplify. So always just follow the formula, and it's going to look wacky, but then you simplify in the end. So this becomes 2x squared plus 1, sorry, plus 2, times 2x. So now we get 4x cubed plus 4x. Okay. Problem solved. So you can see the key to these is figuring out exactly what are the inner and the outer functions. So we'll go over that in the next video.